Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Angela Vorpahl of angelavorpahl.com and the Law School Network Facebook group. And on this channel, I help law students take control of their law school career so that you can build a lawyering life on your own terms. Today's video is a long time coming. As you guys know, this channel focuses exclusively on how to build your law school career and your legal career here in the United States. But a lot of you have had questions coming from the perspective of being an international law student or a foreign trained lawyer who is interested in coming to practice law in the United States. And there are so many considerations in determining if this is the right path for you, from the competitiveness of admissions to the different avenues to actually become licensed, and of course, the job opportunities on the back end. And the problem is that so many of these factors are not talked about. And so there's no way for you to really make an informed decision. So that is what motivated today's video. We are going to dive into all of the factors and the considerations in making this decision and determining if becoming licensed to practice in the US is something that is a good path for you personally to take. And to help us dive into all of the ins and outs is the wonderful Anna Ivy. Anna is the former Dean of Admissions at the University of Chicago Law School, and she is a law school admissions specialist. And she absolutely has dropped so many gems. I can't wait for you guys to dive in. So Anna, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Biggest question number one, what are the options for an international law student or foreign trained lawyer to get a law degree in the US?
Yeah, let's talk about the options in theory, and then we'll talk about the options in reality. So in theory, you have several options. You can try to come to the United States and do a 3-year JD program. You can come to the United States and do a 2-year JD program. You can come to the United States and do an LLM program for foreign trained lawyers, meaning you already have your undergraduate degree in law from your home country. And then in theory, there's the option of just coming and taking the California bar, because it's one of the few states where you don't have to have gone to an accredited US law school to sit for the bar. But not all of those options are practical. And so my strong advice to foreign trained lawyers is to go for the LLM program. And we can talk more about sort of why the other ones might not be so practical, but that's the bottom line. If someone can only take one thing away from this session, it's LLM is going to be the most realistic way for you to go.
That is so incredibly amazing to hear, because I know that so many students have a question about the logistics. And so could you speak a little bit more to why you think the LLM is probably the best option for people coming from other countries to practice law in the US?
Yeah, we've seen a big increase in not even foreign trained lawyers, people who've done undergrad in law or any other subject outside the United States, and then they want to come to the United States to do a JD program. And there are a couple of challenges with that. One is that all systems for practicing law really around the world are cartels, meaning like medicine, you have to qualify to practice within a certain state or country. And if you come to the United States to get a JD, that qualifies you to sit for the bar in the United States and practice in the United States. It is not at all guaranteed that you will be able to go back to your home country or any country that's not the United States and be qualified to practice law. Typically, you have to go through that country's qualification system and sit for their version of the bar. There are some exceptions and there's some reciprocity in certain circumstances, but those are big outliers. The big problem is you say, oh, well, I want to stay in the United States and practice law. That's perfect. Well, there's this thing called the visa, and there's no guarantee either that you will get a visa and be able to stay in the United States and practice law unless you are a US citizen or a green card holder, AKA a permanent resident. So it's just a very risky proposition. And here's the thing, admissions officers at JD programs know this. And so while I don't think they'll ever come out and say it expressly, I do think they hold international applicants to a much higher standard for JD programs, because they know that, look, this is a cartel system. What are the odds that you'll be able to stay in the country? What are the odds that you would be able to go back to your home country with what might be a totally useless degree, after all that money and 3 years and all that heartburn. So applying for the JD seems to be has gotten popular for international students, but we always try to manage expectations around that. The odds are even harder for you, certainly at the top JD programs, and it's competitive enough for the domestic applicants. It's even harder for the international applicants. So I think from the vast majority of people, you're better off getting your undergraduate degree in law in your home country. And then if you still have your heart set on getting a US law degree, then come to the US for a 1-year LLM program. And that LLM then qualifies you to sit for the bar in New York State and California. There might be some other states, but those are the two big ones. And those are also the popular ones. So I think that is a more realistic way for people to go. And chances are you're going to be able to attend a better undergraduate law program in your home country than you would be able to get into a JD program in the United States. One other thing to clear up, it's not obvious to everyone, is that in the United States, a JD, your law degree is graduate only. You do not get a law degree at the undergraduate level. So if you were coming to the United States to do either a JD or an LLM, you would be expected to already have a bachelor's degree. So, ultimately the JD is not some kind of magic pill to come to the United States and practice law. And it's certainly not a magic pill to go anywhere else to practice law. In most cases, that's not a foregone conclusion. The way that you would go back to your home country or somewhere else to practice with a JD is if you are working for a law firm in that country that sponsors you. There are these sort of umbrella arrangements where you might be able to do that with a US JD. But as I say, it's never a guarantee. It's quite risky. And so you want to be realistic about this cartel system that every country has about where you are qualified to practice law. Otherwise, you're left with just a very, very expensive piece of paper hanging on the wall that doesn't do much for you.
And speaking specifically to the JD program, you mentioned that the application standards for international law students or foreign trained lawyers coming to the US to get a JD degree are actually higher, and it's actually more competitive for those students. What have you seen in your law school admissions practice with respect to the standards that JD programs are looking for?
Yeah. And so I should preface all this by saying, like, this is not scientific, right? Like this doesn't have quantitative rigor behind it. This is purely anecdotal from what we've seen. But we've seen that for the international applicants for the top US JD programs, just everything has to be better. And as I say, law schools will not say this explicitly, but that is what we have seen over and over and over again. And so a lot of really amazing international applicants are ending up getting offers from schools that they actually don't want to attend, and for which they think they are overqualified, and in some ways they probably are. So the JD admissions process breaks a lot of hearts, full stop, but it breaks even more hearts, I would say, for non-US applicants. And as I said, I wish I had happier news, but I've seen such an increase in that demand from the applicant side. And that is the message we're always telling people is, we have to manage their expectations. It is not a process that is especially friendly for non-US applicants. But to your point, is it any one factor that's harder? No, just across the board, everything in your application, you are held to a higher standard. And then there's the confounding factor of your undergraduate degree and transcript, which has to go through this sort of translation process, as imperfect as it is. And a lot of international applicants are frustrated and disappointed with how their undergraduate transcripts and degrees are translated, how their performance is translated. A lot of other countries do not have the grade inflation that a lot of American or top American colleges do. And what we found too is that a lot of undergrad bachelor's programs in other countries outside the United States are 3-year programs rather than 4. But in that translation process, some of those 3-year programs, which are completely legitimate bachelor's programs, are deemed not to be the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree. And so then you can't apply at all. If that's not deemed the equivalent of a US bachelor's degree, game over. And as I say, we've seen that with completely legitimate 3-year bachelor's degrees. We've seen it happen in with one program, undergrad program in the Netherlands. We saw it happen with an undergrad program in India. And if that certification body comes to that conclusion, you really have no recourse. I mean, you'd have to get someone very, very high up in your undergraduate program to basically appeal to this certifying body and persuade them that in fact, you are the equivalent of a 4 years bachelor's degree. And from where I sit, it's so preposterous because there are a lot of accredited 4-year bachelor's programs in the United States that are just junk. I mean, they're just terrible programs. There's nothing rigorous about them. And the idea that this is some sort of gold standard where other programs are not deemed the equivalent is just silly. But that is the system we're in. So this is, again, sort of a long-winded way on my part of saying, trying to do the JD is really not the most realistic or effective way to try to get that credential. You're probably going to be better off in getting into a better program in your home country at the undergrad level, getting that first law degree back home, and then coming to the United States for an extra year to do your LLM. But as I was alluding to earlier, you really should plan on having some work experience before you become an attractive candidate for a top LLM program in the United States. And by work experience, I mean full time. I don't mean cobble together work schemes during your breaks in school or so-called pupilages. I mean full-time work experience for a good 2 years before you become an attractive applicant for the top LLM programs, or even for the American legal employers who hire LLMs out of those top LLM programs. So coming straight out of undergrad, not really a realistic path. That you're playing the long game here. This is a long-term strategy.
That is a perfect segue into the next question, which is, why is it so difficult for non-US international law students or foreign trained lawyers to actually find a job as a practicing attorney in the US after they come out of one of these programs?
Yeah, well, look, the job market has its ups and downs for whether it's JD or LLM. Just legal employers, sometimes there are more jobs, sometimes there are fewer. So it's already competitive for American JDs, all wanting those top jobs, whatever they are, right? And those American JDs don't have to worry about visas, right? So from the employer side, you really have to bring something extra to the table as a foreign trained lawyer or someone who doesn't have, pre-existing work authorization to make it worth their time. Now, the top LLM programs in the United States have a fair that they do together, an employment fair. I think it's sort of the top 8 law schools in the country. They're LLM programs for foreign trained lawyers. They have an employment fair. And I think there's a fee that you have to pay. It's several $100s, and you submit your resume, and then then you can sort of interview with employers of LLMs. But same concept on the JD side, except that you don't pay a fee. If you're a JD student, you are competing against all of the domestic students who don't have work authorization issues. So this is just about pure practicalities. It's not that they don't, appreciate what you have to offer. It's a lot easier for them to hire people who already are allowed to work in the United States. Personally, I would not be looking to invest in an LLM solely with the goal of staying in the United States and working for some big New York law firm and making a ton of money. I mean, and that's not really what the LLM programs are designed to do. They're designed to give you this exposure to the US system and then to go back to your home country where for your particular practice, that adds some kind of value. Um, the other thing that makes things tricky, at least on the admissions side for LLMs, is that a lot of other countries really, I'm told on the employment side, are really only interested in the top law schools in the United States and the really kind of strong brand names. I mean, you can get an amazing legal education at a whole bunch of law schools in the United States, but of course, it's usually sort of the usual suspects, where everyone wants to get their LLM from or their degree from. And so I think you have to be really realistic about what those employers back home are going to value as well. And if it's only one of 8 schools, for example, or 10 schools, that's going to make your life more difficult, but you might decide it's just not worth going to a school where that brand name is not going to do what it needs to do for you back in your home country. The other thing that makes things difficult for some applicants is that the top LLM programs in the United States could fill their entire LLM class many times over with applicants from the Commonwealth countries. So Britain, Australia, right? And so if you are an applicant for the LLM programs from one of the Commonwealth countries, it will be harder for you because they don't want to fill their entire class with LLM students from the Commonwealth countries. So if you are not from a Commonwealth country, that actually benefits you because there's just such a big imbalance in terms of who's applying for those spots and where they're coming from.
Okay, so for the LLM graduates coming from other countries who are in a US program, in order to stay and become a fully licensed, fully practicing lawyer in the US, have you seen examples of anybody who has been able to achieve that and find a full-time job as a lawyer in the US without a green card or citizenship or prior work authorization? And if so, what were some of the aspects of what they brought to the table that you think made that possible for them?
Yeah, I mean, I went to school with some of them. I was a JD sitting next to LLMs in all my classes at U Chicago. And these are people who had work experience as lawyers before coming into their LLM programs, typically. So they already had some expertise. They already had a professional network. They already had training back in that system. And their English was very, very good. And so when you have those things to offer a US based practice that also shares those kinds of practice areas and does that kind of international work, then absolutely you have something amazing to offer them. But again, it's because they have that expertise that they acquired before they came into the LLM program.
Okay, so you mentioned that the 2-year JD route and the sitting forward at the California bar without actually going to law school route are not the most advisable paths. Can you talk a little bit about why you feel that's the case?
Well, they're just not realistic. Theoretically, they might be off options, and theoretically, they might sound promising, but as a practical matter, these are just not viable options for most people. So the 2-year JD, the first thing to understand is most law schools do not offer 2-year JDs. Most of them are 3-year programs. And let me tell you, if the 2-year JD programs were so awesome, everyone would want to do them, but they don't. There's some real trade-offs with the 2-year JD programs, the very few that exist. One is that in order to you're basically cramming 3 years worth of coursework into 2 years. So what you're sacrificing is the 2 summers, the summer between the first and the second year, and then the other summer between the second and the third year. You're not out there doing summer associate jobs at law firms or wherever it is that you would be working during those summers. You are in the classroom, and that's the only way to expedite the whole process. So that may be worth it to you. It may not be, but as I say, most law schools don't even offer 2-year JDs. So it's just not something that I think hang all your hopes and dreams on. California is an outlier in that it lets you sit for the bar in California, even if you have not attended law school at all anywhere. That is not the norm. Usually you have to have attended an ABA, that's the American Bar Association, an ABA approved law school in the United States in a JD program to sit for the bar. Not in California. In California, anyone can sit for the bar in theory. Now, the California bar is known as one of the harder ones. I've taken it. It is not a walk in the park. The pass rate is low compared to other states. And we have to be realistic about the employment market. Unless you're looking to just be self-employed and hang out a shingle and do, I don't know, dog bite litigation, whatever walks through the door. If you want to be attractive to a legal employer, you don't skip law school and go sit for the California bar, assuming you can even pass it. But even if you do pass it, the top law firms are not lining up to hire people who just took the bar and didn't go to law school. It's just not a realistic proposition for most people. If you're looking to join a family firm, and so you're not worried about who's going to hire you afterwards, and all you need is this credential bar membership in order to satisfy the cartel, and you're willing to practice in California, then okay, maybe that's a viable option for you. But that's another reminder that in the United States, this cartel system is state by state. There is not a bar membership that qualifies you to practice anywhere in the United States. It is done state by state, and each of the 50 states has their own separate standards and qualifications.
Okay, so to summarize everything that we've talked about thus far, it sounds like if you are an international law student or a foreign trained lawyer who's looking to come to the US to practice, there are a few really important things to keep in mind. It sounds like, one, ideally you would have worked full time as a lawyer in your home country for at least 2 years so that you can be attractive to the US programs. Two, you want to get your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score as high as possible because it's going to be more competitive for you, not less competitive in the US. Number three, it sounds like the best possible investment in terms of time and money and the output of a job either in the US or your home country would be going to a 1-year LLM program. And the last thing I wanted to ask about sort of this best practices list is, would you also say on that list that if you are seriously trying to come to the US to work as a full-time lawyer, or as we also talked about, going back to your home country and letting the LLM do the work for you, that you should really consider investing in one of the top 8, I think you said, LLM programs in the country?
Well, it's the top 8 that sponsor this fair. So that's where the number 8 comes from. But in general, there's no difference between LLM and JD as far as a small number of schools carrying the most weight out in the wider job market. That doesn't change just because it's an LLM program versus a JD program. Whether we like it or not, those top schools, whether it's 8, 9, 10, 14, there's no magic cutoff. But whatever those top schools are, however you define that, they carry extra weight if you are a graduate of one of those programs, and they just open certain doors for you that are harder to open, not impossible, but they're harder to open if you're not coming out of a top program. And I would argue that for a lot of LLM students, it's even more important that they go to a top law school, because in their home countries, they're just not going to take seriously a name of a university that they don't recognize and that whose brand name doesn't carry a lot of weight back home. So that is absolutely something that international students interested in an LLM do need to be thinking about and be realistic about, which is what school is actually going to be useful to me, just purely in terms of brand name. Even if they lock me in a room for a year and I learn nothing, what is the brand name that's still going to add value for me back home? And that's probably a small number of schools. It's not a system I defend, I wish the world were otherwise, but I think here on planet Earth, that is how things work. I will also say that there are a lot of domestic applicants to law school who are not thinking this through. It's not as if they all have great reasons for picking the law schools they pick and going about the process the way they're going about it. There are a lot of people applying to law schools for really boneheaded reasons. They're completely unrealistic about what kinds of schools they should be attending for what they want to do and at what price points, what kind of debt they should be taking on. For a lot of them, it's the path of least resistance, or their parents are driving that bus and they're, hovering or snow plowing around. So I don't mean to suggest that domestic students going to JD programs have this all figured out. A lot of them really, truly don't. And they'll unfortunately figure that out the hard way. I think with LLM students, at least the ones that I know I studied with back in the day, they did have that work experience before they came in. They were more mature. They were often the grownups in the room. A lot of them had, spouses, and they already had careers, and they had all this experience, working at law firms, and they were polished in a way that a lot of the JDs were not. I think that's an advantage that the LLMs have to offer. But yeah, so in all of this, I don't mean for people to take away that sort of the domestic students have this all figured out. No, they don't.
Well, Anna, thank you so much for all of this insight. This is incredibly helpful. I know that we've gotten a ton of questions from people sort of thinking through the options in terms of coming to the US and practicing law here. And I think that the employment opportunities and the admission statistics and things like that just aren't talked about enough in order for them to make an informed decision. And so having it broken out like this, and really seeing kind of what pieces to consider and the likelihood of reaching the goals that you have for yourself and what you realistically need in order to make that happen is just so insanely helpful. So thank you so much. And with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions that we didn't address, make sure to drop them in the comment section below. And if you haven't joined Law School Network Facebook group, be sure to do that at the link in the description, where you can connect with tons of other international students who are going through the exact same process you are and get their tips, strategies, and support. So I hope to see you guys in there soon, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.